Welcome to the Roy Morgan Weekly Update. In a week dominated by the Reserve Bank's decision to raise interest rates for a record 10th consecutive meeting, most of our key indicators fell. But Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's trip overseas to cement ties with key allies has given a boost to the government's support. Voting intention for the Albanese government was up 2% to 56.5% this week, well ahead of the coalition on only 43.5% on a two-party preferred basis. We often see an increase in support for the government of the day when we see our Prime Minister on the international stage. However, the other key indicators fell last week after the Reserve Bank's decision to raise interest rates. Government confidence was down by 3 points to 93, the lowest reading since last year's federal election. Now 45.5% of Australians say the country is heading in the wrong direction, and only 38.5% say the country is heading in the right direction. This leaves government confidence stuck below the neutral level of 100 for the third straight week. Consumer confidence was down 2.9 points to 77, the lowest it's been since April 2020 at the start of the pandemic. And consumer confidence has now averaged below 80 since the start of February, a warning bell for recession. Inflation expectations were up by 0.5% to 5.7% this week, the highest it's been since mid-January. This essentially means Australians are expecting inflation to increase by 5.7% each year over the next 2 years. And despite the spike in this weekly measure, if we look at the 4-week average, it's still in line with the average for the year so far at 5.3%. We'll be keeping a close eye on this indicator. It's proven to be a fairly reliable indicator of future inflation movements, especially over the last few years. As you know, if you've been watching, we have been watching the mortgage market carefully as the consumer confidence of those with mortgages dropped in response to increasing interest rates. Well, consumer confidence is below 80 for all three cohorts this time, and the largest plunge last week was actually for renters, down 7.9 points to 77.2. This is the lowest level of consumer confidence for renters since the Reserve Bank began raising interest rates, and the first time the indicator has dipped below 80 for this group. This generally less affluent group are also the ones driving inflation expectations. Renters' inflation expectations increased this week by 0.9% to 6.4%. This is cost of living pressures and fear of more cost of living increases impacting those least able to afford it. Now we turn to businesses. The latest Roy Morgan Business Confidence for February, coming out today, shows a large plunge in the index, down 10.6 points to 95.8 after the Reserve Bank continued raising interest rates early last month. This February result largely reversed the upward spike that we saw in January, and the index is now down by a large 25 points from a year ago, when it was flying high at 120.5 in Feb 2022. A look at business confidence by size of business is very revealing. Although business confidence is clearly down from a year ago for all sizes of business, there are sharp differences between smaller and larger businesses. In February, business confidence was in negative territory, that is below 100, for both micro businesses, those with under 5 employees, and small businesses, those with 5 to 19 employees. But business confidence was in positive territory, over 100, for medium and large businesses. This dichotomy of views on the current economic situation shows that high inflation and rising interest rates are hitting smaller businesses the hardest, while larger businesses with 20 or more employees are more confident they'll be able to deal with the economic uncertainties. Now we turn to New Zealand, where the political situation has changed considerably with the new Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins. New Zealand is due to face a national election in 7 months' time in mid-October. And Roy Morgan's first full month of polling since the leadership change shows Hipkins helping to lift support for Labor and effectively bridging the gap with the two main opposition parties. In February, support for a potential Labor-Greens coalition government was at 45.5%, up 3.5% from January and up 8 percentage points since late in 2022 before Ardern announced her intention to resign. Support for a potential right-wing National and ACT New Zealand coalition government is also at 45.5% in February, unchanged on January, and down 4 points from December 2022. There's effectively been a 12 percentage point shift in favour of Labor Greens already this year, and the current results put the election result on a knife edge. If these results were repeated at this year's New Zealand election, the Maori Party and New Zealand First would be in the box seat to determine the outcome. Whether Labor leader Chris Hipkins wins an election in his own right, or National leader Christopher Luxon becomes New Zealand's 42nd Prime Minister. And that's a wrap for this week. Subscribe for free to Roy Morgan YouTube channel for all the latest political, economic and market research data and insights. Thanks for listening today, and I look forward to bringing you the latest data on consumer confidence, inflation expectations and voting intentions, both federally and in New South Wales, at the same time next week. Take care and see you next Tuesday.